Identity in sports. How does it work?
Well, I started out looking at the New Zealand-Australian relationship, the rivalry across the Tasman, looking at personal identity of the supporters, which tend to get grouped as a mass. You know, they're still known as the crowd, and they tend to get, certainly in the media and in the research, what little has been done as a collective group, whereas I wanted to look at the individuals, because I've been attending sports all my life, travelling to sports, so I know my own kind of story. I was interested to find that of others. Actually, as the PhD has evolved and I went on some of these trips and I met people, I found a huge crossover with my own story, affecting my research, as you could say, to the point where now essentially the research is looking on an autoethnographical stage at myself and the narratives that have been created with the people I've met on these trips, and my own sort of history of travelling to sport. So it's changed a lot since I started out, safe to say.
And what kind of narratives do you approach there, or what do you find in there?
Well, I'm really interested in history and personal stories that came out of it, so hence at this one, for the heritage value, a lot of people were talking about, the meanings they attached to the ground where the sports was on, the town the game was being played at, family connections, past romantic connections. All of these stories started to come out in people as I was just talking to them, and I found that I could relate to my own stories of travelling to games in the UK and elsewhere. So a lot of their history came out, and I'm very interested in issues of stadiums, and how important is the place where the sport takes place, in affecting whether they go or don't go, whether they just watch it on TV. So a lot of interesting stories came out.
And for example, can you tell?
I met a father and son in Melbourne at one of the Australia-New Zealand Trans-Tasman Bledisloe rugby games. And they first struck me because I was doing a tour of the nearby tennis arena, Rod Laver Centre, and you had the son in his mid-40s or so, wearing an all-black shirt, all-black scarf, clearly showing Kiwi, but he was hanging around with this older gentleman who was in as much yellow as possible with the yellow scarf, the Australian, and I, doing the tour, just commented on how they knew each other, and, seeing about the banter, and then it came out they were father and son, the father being Australian, the son being born in New Zealand, having a New Zealand mum, and just the stories they had, and the little bit of banter, but it was more, you could see that they were there as a bonding trip. They kind of drifted apart, so the stories you get, they were there. It meant more than anything for them to be together at this occasion, to the point where Australia won the game, so he had a lot more, the edge, but it was much more than just the sporting context of the trip. It was quite nice to see, and it got me feeling about, you start reflecting upon the trips I used to go with my grandfather to games, and just how I related to them, and they actually took me in because I was on these games by myself. So they took me in and they said, "Oh, you can't go to these by yourself. Come and have a drink with us before the game." And at least, there's that social aspect, which is huge, I think, in the sports market.
And coming to the subject of the conference here, selling or telling.
Well, what I'm looking at here is therefore the personal heritage, from a personal angle, looking at the importance of. I've done a lot of these nostalgic sports museums, and where they try and sell you a tale of the past, and it's very wrapped up in the nostalgic motion, So then I'm interested from looking at the telling of tales to how these people actually tell their own individual tales, and a lot of them can be more modern as well. They're not. It doesn't have to be a story from 50 years ago. It could be a story from 2 years ago. To them that's still the past, and that's what they remember, and so looking at the kind of issues with those kind of tales.
Cool, thank you.